So what's up people and welcome to the chapter 115 discussion of Kaiju number 8 or Kaiju 8号. So chapter 115 came out recently, and as always I will leave a link to this chapter that's currently being shown on the publisher's official website, Manga Plus, for free to the North American audience. So if you're interested, we'll go take a look at it before they pull this chapter back. Okay, so chapter 115. If you recall, I really enjoyed chapter 114 because of the intended dread that chapter brought out with regards to the things that were going on at the end of the chapter. And so I was looking forward to seeing how chapter 115 was going to deal with that dread. And I did enjoy chapter 115, but I have to say that there were some things that were, I guess for me, a little bit of a nitpick and a little bit of a disappointment. And they are nitpicks. But I did want to talk about it here. Now, if you recall, the reason that I had dread in chapter 114 was because once that overwhelming monster came out, the sheer speed at which it was able to take out Kafka, or monster number 8, was quite severe and very powerful. And why it brought about a cliffhanger in chapter 114 was because that same attack was focused in Mina. And as you can see from the final image in 114, you see Mina with those alien characters on her face. And it was at that moment when the exact same characters were put on Kafka that he immediately got hit with a devastating attack. And so the dread came because we find out that this monster can unleash a tremendous attack in an instant without the target being able to do anything about it. And so when you see it against Mina's head, the uncomfortable feeling is that she is going to be sliced in two. And why I found that chapter 115 was a little bit of a disappointment is because considering just how fast and how devastating the attack was against Kafka, we start out the chapter of 115 where the monster is going into a monologue while performing this attack. As many people often describe this as talk no jutsu, right? Where the enemy creates this long monologue that gives the good guys the ability to consider what they want to do next. And I guess this is supposed to draw out the tension, but in this case, the whole point was the tension was created by the sheer speed and the devastation of the attacks that came against Kafka, and now they were focused on Mina. And yet when this chapter came out, you see this long monologue that comes from, of all characters, monster number 9, that talks about how nobody was able to escape this overwhelming monster, which he already talked about in 114. So you get this kind of recap that extends out this tense moment without providing any additional information about the situation. And because it extends out the moment, it kind of plays down the intense nature of this monster's attack. The other thing that I found very curious was that if you recall, monster number 9 was defeated in the previous chapters where its core was destroyed. And that's the reason why this overwhelming monster came out. And yet now we see in chapter 115 that despite its core being destroyed, monster number 9 still is there to provide that talk no jutsu and extend this point out. And so that was a little bit of a disappointment. This sheer intense attack that came out one after another was extremely well done in 114, and yet when 115 came out, when Mina was in that extreme point of peril, the stereotypical shonen trope of talking during a battle came out. Now, this may not be the case because since you see monster number 9 doing the discussion, maybe this was a self-focused conversation that happened sometime prior to when the overwhelming monster focused on Mina. Also, because this is not a conversation, but really just a thought, maybe it's happening at an extremely fast pace. But the problem with that, once again, is that when you talk about a story, a lot of the pacing comes from how the story is brought out. And in the previous chapter, monster number 8 was immediately attacked one after another by some very fast-paced attacks, and that gave that feeling of dread. And then in this case, even if it is just an instantaneous thought, because it's drawn out, it brings down that intense nature that you got in chapter 114. Now, once again, I did say that this is a nitpick, and it is probably due to me. And so please take this with a grain of salt. It's basically just my point with regards to how it was so well set up in 114, and then we had this unfortunate situation in 115. But whatever the case, the story continues on, and it's pretty good. Despite being under this situation, Mina still is able to keep her ferocity. And we cut from monster number 9's thoughts now to Mina's thoughts. And in the beginning, you're not really exactly sure what she's talking about, because she's saying he has always been that way, which I originally thought was a thought about Kafka. But then she continues, he makes up for my many shortcomings and he's always cleared the situation so that I can move with ease. And so now, with the image and what you read, you realize that she's not talking about Kafka, she's talking about Hoshina. And the reason that she's talking about Hoshina is because he is the one that comes in clutch to save the situation. Now, coming back to my complaint again, I would have enjoyed this if Hoshina came immediately into the situation so that it shows just how important that fast strike was necessary for Mina to avoid getting that devastating attack. But under this situation, I'll say it's okay. And fortunately for Mina, her partner is so competent to be able to take on monster number 9 or this overwhelming monster. And because Mina is in this intense thought, she's able to follow up right away with her attacks. But of course, this is the overwhelming monster, and everybody knows that it's not about to go down that easily. So we see this really cool image with Hoshina receiving a tremendous number of blades and being able to strike monster number 2 with attack after attack. This kind of reminds me of some of those old samurai movies where the protagonist will put a tremendous number of swords into the battleground before the battle, and then as his sword would dull, he would throw away his old sword and then pick up a new one and start going into battle again. So this is kind of a homage to that sort of drama, at least from my perspective. But what we of course find out is that this overwhelming monster can counter very, very quickly, and despite Hoshina's attacks, it really doesn't affect the monster. And so both Hoshina and Mina are realizing that if they ever get caught in this monster's attack, because it's so devastating and so immediate, they won't be able to survive even a single hit. But even under that situation, Hoshina tells Mina to take care of Kafka, and he will take care of this monster. And of course, Mina, being his partner, says that it is an opponent that neither one of them can take out alone. To which Hoshina then answers, who is going to be alone? Let more of us join the fight. Give me the permission to bring others in. At which point then you hear Narumi's voice come in and say, permission? Why the heck do I need any sort of permission from you guys for me to join the fight? And you see the image of Narumi coming into battle at the end of this chapter. So one thing that we're starting to see is we're already starting to get the indication that all the other members are coming in. If you remember, these guys were battling all those other huge monsters and weren't able to join in the battle. But because monster number 9 was taken out, all those huge monsters stopped. And so the expectation is the other members of the JDF will join. And the end of this chapter is indicating that that is the case. And so aside from Narumi, we expect that the other JDF members will come in. And the way Matsumoto Naoya writes this story with regards to friendship being an important thing, you kind of expect that to happen. And in the meantime, you kind of expect there to be another chapter where Kafka, within his body of monster number 8, is going to have an inner challenge for him to be able to step up and overcome the situation that he's in. And the only way he's going to be able to do that is with the support from Mina from outside. You kind of already see that coming, and we probably will see a battle where, despite all the members of the JDF coming in, this overwhelming monster will be too powerful until Kafka comes into the game. And so I am going to look forward to seeing what happens. For all I know, this isn't going to be the way it happens, and I will be very happy if there is another twist. But in any case, there is this indication that if the final battle is with the overwhelming monster and all of the JDF will participate, then the only way they may be able to overcome this is for them to defeat this monster. And if they defeat this monster, there may be an indication that we are coming to the end of the story. And so it will be interesting to see what Matsumoto Naoya does in the next few chapters. And once chapter 116 comes out, I'll bring out another video and hope you join me at that time. But this is the chapter 115 discussion of Kaiju 8号 or Kaiju number 8. If you read it, what you think about it, any comments will be greatly appreciated. And until the next chapter, happy manga reading, and as always, Jaya, nice day everyone.